Happy Friday, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Jaein in Seoul. Coming up on today's edition of Business Daily. The Moon Jae-in government is looking to roll out a supplementary budget to create more jobs and keep up the growth momentum. And we take a look at the first messages of congratulations from world leaders to President Moon as he navigates challenges ahead. These stories and more coming right up. The Korean government plans to make active use of fiscal measures to revitalize the local economy. Despite the recent pickup in economic data, one of President Moon Jae-in's campaign pledges was to draw up an extra budget to create quality jobs and prop up the economy. Our Kim Min-ji starts us off.
The Korean government may soon mull over drawing up a supplementary budget. In its monthly economic assessment report, the Finance Ministry said it will carefully manage market risks while using fiscal measures which could include an extra budget aimed at creating quality jobs and boosting growth. It's the first time the Finance Ministry has mentioned the possibility of drawing up a supplementary budget since President Moon Jae-in took office. It was one of Moon's campaign pledges to implement an extra budget worth almost $9 billion to expand job creation. But whether this will be feasible depends on a number of factors. Recent economic data shows that the Korean economy may be on a path of recovery. In April, exports rose 24% on-year, posting positive growth for 6 straight months after nearly 2 years of decline. This recently prompted the Bank of Korea as well as the IMF to raise their growth outlooks for the Korean economy. But there are concerns as these developments have not yet spread to consumption and the country's job market, especially for young job seekers. Korea's youth unemployment rate stood at 11.2% in April, the highest figure tallied for that month since 1999, and much higher than the country's average 4.2%. Retail sales remained flat in March compared to a month before, and there are worries that the retail industry could be hit harder due to a decline in Chinese tourist numbers. Beijing has banned the sale of group tour packages to Korea as part of its unofficial sanctions against Seoul for hosting a U.S. missile defense system. On issuing the extra budget, the Finance Ministry says that it will discuss the issue with relevant ministries without going into specifics. Some experts say that improvements in the first quarter provide little reason to implement one. But others argue the recent progress is temporary, coming only from certain sectors, which is why they believe a supplementary budget will be necessary to keep the economy on track. Kim Min-ji, Business Daily.
Now, in his first official schedule outside of the presidential office, President Moon Jae-in visited Incheon International Airport Corporation this morning to attend an event that aims to address the nation's high unemployment rate. Now, this hints at the newly elected president's determination to put the unemployment problem on top of his to-do list. The event took place under the slogan, ushering in an era of no irregular workers in the public sector. He held on-site inspections and discussed measures to create stable work opportunities in the public sector. During his campaign, Moon promised to fight chronic youth unemployment and create 810,000 public sector-related jobs. ICT sector is seen as the likely source for Korea's next economic growth engine. And our Kim Ji-yeon explains what President Moon has pledged to do on that front.
During his campaign, President Moon Jae-in vowed to establish a new committee supervised by himself dedicated to the so-called Fourth Industrial Revolution. He believes the committee, comprising state and private experts, will contribute to creating an effective platform so that the country can better prepare for the Fourth Industrial Revolution, which he cited as one of the most effective ways Korea can find its new growth engine and help realize his Smart Korea initiative. In his pledge, he vowed to expand government funding for tech startups and strengthen the country's drive for deregulation. Also in his pledge, President Moon said he would establish a public center for big data that could be used to promote artificial intelligence technology. He also said he would give software startups a probation period for the payment of corporate taxes. President Moon said he'll push for the early installment of the next-generation 5G internet connectivity to boost content in the era of the Internet of Things, where everything is connected to the World Wide Web. He also vowed to strengthen and expand software education in schools with the aim of creating more than 10,000 experts in the field over the next 5 years. And to defend the country from North Korean cyber attacks, he vowed to create a control tower for cybersecurity and lessen South Korea's heavy reliance on its National Intelligence Service so that the agency can focus more on gathering intelligence about North Korea. Kim Ji-yeon, Business Daily.
U.S. President Donald Trump once again strongly voiced his desire to renegotiate the Korea-U.S. Free Trade Agreement. During an interview with The Economist on Thursday local time, Trump called the Korea-U.S. FTA a horrible deal that was made by Hillary Clinton. Trump also said Seoul has been informed of his intent to renegotiate the deal and that he wants fair terms. However, Korea's trade ministry said they received no official notice from the U.S. government regarding such talks. Back over in Washington, President Trump now has a front man to convey his trade policies after the U.S. Senate confirmed his nominee to serve as U.S. Trade Representative. Robert Lighthizer has become Washington's top trade negotiator after the Senate voted 82-14 in favor of his nomination. He previously served as the deputy U.S. Trade Representative under the Ronald Reagan administration and is known for his protectionist views. The Korean equity market has been on a roller coaster ride since President Moon Jae-in took office. Foreign investors unloaded shares on the Kospi, spooking overall sentiment. And to give us a wrap-up of this week's stock market action, we're now joined by markets contributor Choi Jin-seok. Hello, Jin-seok.
Great to be here.
All right, so how are things looking on the last day of trading?
Both the Kospi and the Kosdaq market showed a sluggish picture in the last session of the week. The Kospi dropped by 0.45% to close at 2286.02, while the Kosdaq followed with a 0.5% downtick to close at 643. The Kospi index rebounded sharply, breaking another record high in yesterday's session. However, the market started today's session with a slight downtick and stayed in negative territory throughout the session. The biggest factor in today's market was that foreigners unloaded shares on the Kospi for the first time in 6 sessions. Moreover, the amount of shares they sold was almost the largest in 3 months. Although institutions bought about the same amount, the Kospi market lost its momentum. Most sectors, excluding some non-cyclical defensive stocks, were sluggish. Among blue-chip stocks, Samsung Electronics rose for the first time in 3 sessions.
All right, then how's the overall weekly performance? I mean, despite today's change in position, foreigners did buy a massive amount of shares on a weekly basis.
That's right. On a weekly basis, the Kospi surged by around 2% again, and the Kosdaq followed with a rally of over 1%. Although foreigners sold shares today, they bought massive amounts of shares on a weekly basis. Retail investors were the only net sellers on the Kospi market. Political uncertainty was removed both at home and abroad this week, and this helped foreigners buy shares aggressively. They specifically bought shares of companies that had experienced a sharp decline. By sector, auto, consumer staples, and biotechnology shares enjoyed a rally, while communications and utilities performed weakly.
Now, better corporate earnings have been supporting recent gains in global equity markets. But now that the earnings season is almost over, what are some of the factors that could affect future movements?
Experts say future movements of the Korean market in the near term will be determined by liquidity. In other words, the investment position of foreigners will be the most important factor. Helped by a lower level of political uncertainty, capital inflows from foreigners have been concentrated in a short period of time. For instance, foreigners bought 1.25 trillion Korean won worth of stocks in just 5 sessions recently. During the same period, the Kospi index jumped from 2,200 to 2,300. One of the characteristics of the recent buying spree is that foreigners have been focusing on high multiple stocks or growth stocks, which have already experienced a sharp rally. Therefore, the Korean market is expected to continue its liquidity-based trend depending on the investment position of foreign investors.
Now, on a similar note, the Chinese equity market benefited from expectations of a liquidity injection from its central bank just yesterday. So how did the market move today?
Right, the Shanghai equity market rebounded from early losses in today's session. The composite index started the session with a slight downtick, but it erased early losses to stay in positive territory in late hours. Expectations that the People's Bank of China, or the PBOC, will provide liquidity through its medium-term lending facility, or the MLF, lifted overall sentiment yesterday, and the positive trend has continued through today. However, the Shanghai market performed relatively weakly on a weekly basis. Before the index rebounded on Tuesday, the market had gone through a 5-day losing streak. The index fell to the lowest level in 6 months on Wednesday as well. In the near term, experts think China's Belt and Road Forum that will take place from May 14 to 15 will affect the market.
Now, the Japanese equity market was slow today as well. So what are the expectations going forward?
As I've said a few times, the Japanese market tends to be very sensitive to external factors. The market opened today's session with a slight downtick affected by the U.S. market that fell overnight. The value of the Japanese yen was relatively strong during the session, and this dragged down the Nikkei index as well. Despite today's drop, expectations are quite rosy. Helped by external positive catalysts, the Nikkei index rebounded by 8% from its recent bottom on April 14. The market cap increased by $210 billion within less than a month as well. Most experts see the index going even higher, citing better corporate earnings, fewer geopolitical risks, and better economic conditions from other countries. Citigroup, for example, projects the Nikkei index will break 20,500 this month.
All right, thank you so much for the wrap up today, and see you next week.
Thank you.
The Asia-Pacific region has vibrant, growing economies in all shapes and sizes. The UN Economic Commission in the region has forecast steady growth for these countries, but at a lower pace than before due to a wide array of global uncertainties. And a panel discussion took place right here in Seoul to look at how to overcome various risk factors. Our Woo Soo-young takes us there.
Effective governance and improved fiscal management are essential to achieving robust economic growth and keeping it sustainable. That's according to a survey released last week by the UN's Economic and Social Commission for the Asia-Pacific.
There is a weaker demand for goods and services from Asia-Pacific. And when you combine that with the protectionist measures in the Western countries, it is obviously an area of concern. But by putting in place, again, as I said, proactive fiscal policies, effective governance, and structural reforms in these countries, you're able to get the better of it.
To offer a Korean perspective on how to tackle challenges to growth, a panel discussion was held in Seoul on Friday.
Globally, in many advanced countries, developed world, interest rate is already very low. And in Korea too, our policy rate is 1.25%, which is relatively low. So we have not much room for for additional monetary policy. The effect of monetary policy has been diminished. That's what we have observed for last few years. On the other hand, we have some more room for fiscal policy.
Korea shared its experience of encouraging private sector loans to small and medium-sized businesses, largely regarded as key drivers of job creation, innovation and growth. In the late 1970s, Korea established an institution to provide security for lenders while offering easier access and lower interest rates for smaller companies. Since then, the amount of loans given to small companies has outgrown the amount provided to larger companies, which typically pose lower credit risks. This helped consolidate a healthy SME loan market.
Unfortunately, most of the developing country has very slow development of private financing sectors. So that why government needed to intervene the private financial market to accelerate the development of MSMEs in those reasons.
Other examples shared include Korea's public finance management and the deposit insurance scheme, which safeguards individual savers against the possible failure of the banking sector. To optimise such measures and mobilise resources to support them, the SCAP survey says raising the quality of governance is vital. This means enhancing the rule of law, tackling corruption and building stronger institutions based on transparency and accountability. Next week, SCAP will begin discussions on how countries in the Asia-Pacific region can enhance their economic cooperation to overcome shared vulnerabilities and also unlock their full potential. Woo Soo-young, Business Daily.
The Transport Ministry has ordered Korea's two largest car makers issue a recall for 238,000 vehicles, citing faulty parts. After reviewing 5 cases of suspected defective parts, the ministry issued a forced recall for Hyundai Motor and its sister company Kia Motors. In a joint statement, the company said they plan to take all necessary steps to repair or replace all faulty parts. The ministry had initially issued a recall recommendation on cases from March 29th and April 21st, but the two car makers raised objections, leading to a hearing early this week. Models affected are Hyundai's Avante, Genesis, and Ecus, among others. 4 models from Kia will be affected, including its Carnival and Mojave. The faulty parts identified range from lug nuts to vacuum pipes and fuel hoses. The investigation was launched after the ministry was tipped off by a former Hyundai employee. Wearable devices are becoming a part of our daily lives. As they continue to evolve by the day, we might soon come to wear them like a second layer of skin. And our Elliot Kim introduces us to a new functional material developed by a team of local researchers.
A group of Korean researchers have developed a new functional material that could further enhance the versatility of the next generation of wearable devices. The newly developed patch-shaped material is 50 micrometers thick, making it flexible enough to fit on any surface of the user's body. In other words, wearable devices made with this material can be worn on the arm or the back of one's hands to check time or even make phone calls. To make the new wearables, researchers use a newly developed plastic plate with the flexible circuit board printer. They apply drops of liquid plastic that work as glue on the plate. LED chips are then mounted before the glue hardens. Finally, wires made of silver connect the chips. While the most complex part of the process is the wiring at the end, the wire structure is easily designed through advanced printing technologies.
By using process output, we can print any images as they're drawn on the board. In this way, we can keep the cost down and even make the circuit board in bigger sizes.
The researchers expect this new technology to be especially helpful in healthcare, with new devices able to monitor biometrics and track health conditions. Elliot Kim, Business Daily.
Time now for a look through some important global business stories from the week with our Eunice Kim joining us in the studio today. Hi, Eunice.
Happy Friday.
All right, so this week, one of the top headlines came from right here at home, the election of our president, right? After months of standstill at the top office. And we hear that President Moon Jae-in has received some congratulations from leaders around the world.
That's absolutely right. And his first call came from U.S. President Donald Trump Wednesday night. That's, of course, the day he was sworn in. And then China's Xi Jinping and Japan's Shinzo Abe yesterday. From what we're hearing was said on those calls, President Moon Jae-in looks to be moving quickly on various sticky issues that could shift the course of how Seoul moves in relation to its neighbors. Take a look.
A whirlwind 22 days of official campaigning culminated in Tuesday's early election. Koreans cast their votes for their next president, who'd fill the post left empty by impeached leader Park Geun-hye.
Last year, Park Geun-hye abused her authority, which angered the people. I voted with the hope of not electing the same kind of president again in the future.
Taking the country forward over the next 5 years will be Moon Jae-in, the modest 64-year-old human rights lawyer turned liberal politician, who Time magazine dubbed the negotiator on its cover. President Moon begins his term at a time when the country is facing not only hefty economic hurdles and an aggressive North Korea, but also soured relations with key ally countries. Moon expressed readiness.
안보 위기도 서둘러 해결하겠습니다. 한반도의 평화를 위해 동분서주하겠습니다. 필요하면 곧바로 워싱턴으로 날아가겠습니다. 베이징과 도쿄에도 가고 여건이 조성되면 평양에도 가겠습니다.
On the night of his inauguration, President Moon received his first state call, who sent his congratulations with an open invitation to Washington for discussions on North Korea and other pending issues accepted by Moon. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi tweeted the new leader in fluent Korean, saying he looks forward to a special strategic partnership. On the first full day of his presidency, congratulations continue to flow in, notably from Seoul's neighbors Japan and China. In a 40-minute conversation around noon, Chinese President Xi Jinping and President Moon addressed head-on their two countries' biggest sticking point, the U.S. anti-missile system THAAD that's won the ire of Beijing and dealt heavy financial blows to some Korean businesses at home and in China. President Moon, who had maintained the THAAD deployment needs to be reviewed, reportedly asked Xi to consider easing those roadblocks, while noting the issue could be resolved if Pyongyang were to fold its nuclear ambitions. China's state-run news media portrayed the call as conciliatory. Moon's office cited Xi as sharing that he'd been watching the son of Korean War refugees from the north with great interest.
During today's conversation, the leaders of the two countries both expressed they place a high level of importance on China-South Korea and South Korea-China relations. They both expressed their willingness to develop the relationship between the two countries and their desire to bring them back to a healthy and stable development track.
In an afternoon call with Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, Moon was not shy to point out the 2015 deal reached by his predecessor to resolve the sex slave issue with Tokyo was widely viewed as unacceptable by most South Koreans, even as Abe expressed a desire for a future-oriented relationship with the new administration.
The president stressed that we must deal with our problems earnestly, look straight at history to make sure that issues of past and present do not get in the way.
So from the issue of sexual slavery with Japan to THAAD with China, there are hints of possible shifts that President Moon could make on Korea's relations with these countries.
That's absolutely right. And of course, these are important relations with economic implications for a region as interdependent as Korea, Japan, and China. President Moon Jae-in has positioned himself as the jobs president with a promise to create 810,000 new public sector jobs over his term. He's also advocated for raising taxes and getting a $9 billion extra budget through Parliament to help lift Korea's economic growth. And there are already movements to send special envoys to the U.S., China, and Japan, as well as Russia, countries deemed to have strategic importance diplomatically as well as economically. Also notable is President Moon's significantly more open stance to North Korea than his predecessor, having served as chief of staff to former President Roh Moo-hyun, whose key legacy is his sunshine policy toward Pyongyang. Moon has advocated for economic cooperation between the two Koreas in a move toward warmed relations and eventually reunification,
which could run counter to U.S. President Donald Trump's policy of eye for an eye, right? I mean, the two did agree, though, to work together moving forward, so we'll keep an eye on how that plays out. But meanwhile, President Trump is in some hot water himself after abruptly firing his FBI director.
Yeah, that's right. And he has insisted that this is not a politically motivated decision since Tuesday. That is when, according to U.S. media reports, FBI Director James Comey had reportedly found out he was fired through a television report while he was in Los Angeles to meet with FBI agents there. This has become a hot-button issue in the U.S. for no less reason than the timing of it. Comey had told Congress the FBI was investigating the Trump camp's alleged links to Russia, though the U.S. president took pains to thank Comey in his final letter to the now former FBI director for confirming to him on 3 separate occasions that he was not under probe. The Trump administration says they will install a replacement as soon as possible. But many in the U.S. media have been calling the President Trump's Watergate moment, referring to that cover-up that, of course, ultimately led to the resignation of former U.S. President Nixon. The reason Trump gave for the firing, that James Comey was simply no longer able to effectively lead the law enforcement agency.
What a reason he gave, right? All right, thank you so much for coming in today.
You bet.
And that wraps it up for today and this week, but we'll be back next week with more of the day's top business stories, so don't forget to tune in then. Thanks so much for watching and see you soon.